going on, guys? It's Friday again, coming to you guys window tinting. Here with another quick video. What we're gonna do here is today I'm gonna show you how to well, not necessarily show you, but at least so you guys can see how we go about shrinking and tacking this front windshield on a Ford F-150. I'm sure you guys, or hopefully you guys already saw that other video of how we prep this window to get it all nice and clean and everything, getting ready for this. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a 50% film on our windshield. So initially what we're going to do here is lay it down on our windshield, do a quick tack. I like to do a quick tack just to, so I can start trimming everything around. Use a fresh blade, snap off our blade, make sure we got good coverage, come around the edge, and just trim this bad boy so you don't have all this extra stuff hanging around that you have to fight with. So we trim it, and again, what I like to do is I like to keep a wet towel around so then that way I can moisten up that windshield underneath for that quick tack, so it doesn't move around when we're shrinking it, and even right now when we're getting it fitted to work. So go around the next side. Again, do the same thing. Trim the edges. Go all the way, obviously, past the black frit that's right there. Don't trim it right to that edge right there. And then, depending on how curved your window is usually where you have to sort of read the film to see where it lays down the best when you pull it. That's where you tack it down. Like for example, I pulled it a little bit right there, and it looks like right around here it's where it's laying down. So that's where we're gonna lay our film. Now you remember, it has to be pretty much a straight line. You don't want to have it curve or anything. I know sometimes when you're first starting off, it's a little bit weird because you're prone to, to try to, in your mind, a straight line is with the curve, so you try to follow it, but actually if you look straight ahead, a straight line is actually a little bit farther down on an angle from the curve. So like I said, we use that wet, tack it down right here, and again, then we just trim this bottom piece. So again, we don't have all this extra stuff. I like to leave the top. It makes me feel better having a little extra up there. Sometimes, thankfully, it doesn't happen too often. But once in a while, if you'll run into an issue in the top corner, it's nice to have a little bit of extra material to pull on when in case you run into something like that. Again, usually the film will lay the way it wants to lay, and you don't really have to fight it. But sometimes on these windows that have like a weird little curve or like a little thing going on right here, it's always nice to have a little bit of extra to pull. And just because also you try to leave a lot extra more up on top or even down on the bottom. So then that way, you don't put as much. At least the way I like to look at it is, I don't put as much like mental stress on myself. I'm thinking that I have to get the perfect shrink all the way down to here, and then that way, sort of when you first begin to start to, to tint windows and shrinking them and stuff like that, you kind of panic a little bit because you're like, oh my God, I got to make sure that I get it perfect all the way down to there. But the thing is you leave it a little bit over. you just shrink all the way down, shrink all the way down, shrink all the way down. Before you know it, you're already past that point that you need to be, and you're all set to go. So notice again, whenever I'm trimming my window around the edges, I don't, bring out my blade an awful lot. Actually, I just bring it out the first click where you can barely see the blade come out, and then just ride that edge. All right, so now after that, we're gonna go ahead and start shrinking it. Doesn't matter what kind of car you're doing, anything like that. Always put this the extension cord over your shoulder. You want to protect the paint and everything around as best as possible. So now, if you remember, again, everybody has a different way they like to do stuff. This window is relatively okay to work with. It's not super challenging, but again, some people like to come down here and separate big fingers and then work on each specific finger basically. The way I like to do things is I like to shrink a whole piece together. I feel that we have a pretty much even stretch with the film along the whole film. It's better for it in the long run as opposed to having a lot of stress spots, which I feel is what shrinking each finger causes. So first what I like to do is I like to come with one pass to give it that initial heat, and then on my way back I come by with my card and continue it. Always remember we're shrinking straight up and down. Again, with the curve on some of these windows, you might get a little bit confused, and you start, try to pull fingers towards you or all the way away from you, which is another reason why I like to leave a piece of the straight, the factory edge down at the bottom, to remind me that I'm actually going just straight down into that edge. It helps a lot. It's always helped me. Also another reason, that's another reason why I leave that top edge on that film, because I feel it reminds me that, because no matter how long you've been doing this, nobody's perfect. So I like to, sometimes I feel myself starting to shrink, starting to lay it down with my smart card a complete different and weird way, and you could see it actually when you start doing it on your film. You'll start pulling fingers in odd which ways, and you're like, what? Why is this not laying down like it was initially? So there we go. We got this first quarter going on. Again, I'm a short guy, so, and like everything, we like to do things in quarters. So again, I like to take my first initial pass across the whole film, and then on my way back, I start pushing. Again, remembering that you're going straight up. So the thing is here, eventually, depending on which film you prefer to use, you'll start to recognize different characteristics of it, of how it reacts to heat or to a certain amount of heat. Again, like everything else that you do, it's all practice, 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 right? I mean, it's inevitable. You're going to mess up some film. You're going to have to tear it off and start all over. Along that time is when you're going to start learning how, hey, this film, if I don't add enough heat to it, it's not going to do this. If I add too much heat to it, it does this. It's part of the learning. Again, it's part of practicing with whatever film you and specifically are using. And here we go. We're all the way up to the top edge. Did I have to shrink all the way up there? No, but it makes me feel good that, you know, it's all laid down and everything. Oh, we got it looked like it was a little crease, but we didn't. Well, actually it is. So what we can do there is pull this back a bit. So we lift that up, lay it back down, try to get some air underneath that bad boy. Hit it with your gun, and now it's gone. You know, we'll go ahead and we'll relay this down a little bit again. Always make sure before you give it a pass with your card, or whatever you decide to use. If it's a smart card, or your white Teflon card, or even just those softer wool cards. Here we got another little crease again. Get some air in it, and then we're good to go. So after I get it all the way up to the top, that's when I like to take my knife, trim it. That piece is all set to go. The rest is all shrunk and ready to go again. Obviously, theoretically, you're good to go. And then lays back down. So now we'll go ahead and we'll hit that other side. Now, everybody has a different a preference as to what type of which heat gun everybody uses. Again, what card you use to shrink your film. I like to tell everybody, I'm not that kind of guy who's going to tell you my way is the perfect way, this is the best way. Everything that I do is the best way for me. Every tool that I use is what works for me. So again, we hit this uniformly again. Again, it's one of those things where once you start doing this enough, you'll see here that sometimes I get away from what I'm actually showing you guys and start doing little pieces at a time. But again, it's one of those things that you'll start learning once you start working with your particular film, how it reacts and how it works, and pretty much you start to understand how much stress or how little stress you actually allow to put on it. So here we go again. Usually a good rule of thumb as well is to start on the corners. Let me make that a little bit clearer. Start at the, your corners, your ends, over here, at these edges, especially when you have a relatively curved window. The reason why is I find it, for me, it's a lot easier to shrink these corners and have a little more slack on the middle section, and it's easier for me to lay that down as opposed to lay the easiest part down first and then end up with a lot of slack on the corners. So here we go. Now we got this last corner to go. So again, always looking up. You see, this is our factory edge. Always trying to push up straight into that, not not against it or away from it or anything like that. And also, you see sometimes in a lot of videos, like whenever we're pushing this film, I've noticed that on video, it looks like you're putting a ton of pressure on this thing. This thing is super soft. Not super soft, but pliable enough where, you put a little bit of pressure and it looks like it's bending. It looks like I'm putting, all muscle behind it, but it really isn't. You're just laying it down because the film wants to lay down naturally anyways. So you're basically just helping it, I guess at the end of the day, take that shape that you're trying to give it. So At the beginning, when I started, it was the same thing. I used to think that I had to put a ton of pressure on this stuff, and you don't. It's basically, again, just shrink it to the point where you see and you know that your film is reacting in a positive way that you want it to lay down. So, again, we're all the way up to our top. We're good with that. Again, take our edge, take our knife. Now we trim that top. And pretty much that window is all shrunk. After this, basically what we do is we're going to go ahead and trim it all around the edges, come down to the bottom, trim that, and then if you remember or if you've watched any of the other videos, what I like to do, again, whether it's a windshield or a rear window on a car, just like we do on the side windows, double shrink this bad boy. Once you're done trimming it to where you're supposed to be, pull it up, about 2-3 inches, lay it back down, create a little bit of slack. Like I said before, sometimes it doesn't look like it's much at all, but that little bit of slack is that little bit that's going to help you not, have it keep on sucking up all that moisture that's down at the bottom sometimes, and it'll help you lay it down pretty well right on your first pass. Again, thanks again for watching, guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Subscribe to the channel. Anything that you guys think you want to see, suggestions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll try my best to answer everything that I can, and keep on posting videos to show you and try to answer those questions as best as possible. Thanks, guys. You guys have all a great day.